next speaker is Markéta Jakešová. Is that good?
Perfect.
Nice. Marketa is a PhD candidate in philosophy at Charles University in Prague and Université Toulouse, Jaurès. A former fellow at Worth Institute for Austrian and Central European Studies at University of Alberta. Earlier, she obtained her master's degree in comparative literature and religious studies in Prague. Her dissertation project consists in combining actor network theory, Bruno Latour, among others, RIP, recently, right? And Maurice Merleau-Ponty's phenomenology with the emphasis on the body. She publishes articles on Jean-Luc Nancy, Benjamin, and Immanuel Kant's aesthetic theory. She regularly publishes commentaries on contemporary feminist and postcolonial topics in Czech magazines and occasionally translates French to Czech. So let's welcome Markéta.
Hello. So I think that what we already kind of, complained about, like, for example, I don't like this name anymore because I really liked Ray's point about like that we can just call it non-monogamy, and it actually will make a perfect point in my presentation. So you can just like cross the ethical out for now. So my main topic today is to challenge the usually unchallenged rules about non-monogamy, which is the truth, honesty, and communication. A lot of things that I'm gonna say are going to be a little redundant. I think that the most interesting points I'm gonna make in the end are the most controversial and also the least developed. But I think that it is also very common. So let's go with this. So first I'm gonna try to summarize what I think is triggering about non-monogamy and more specifically about open relationships. Then I'm gonna turn to like what I found inherent problems of non-monogamy discourses might be. Then I will touch upon some structural problems of non-monogamy, which, a lot of them have been also already discussed, so we'll see. Then there is going to be the promised Foucault, and then some propositions in the end. Some disclaimers. I know that it's a bad practice to apologize in the beginning of a presentation. I'm gonna do it anyway. So first, like, this is not my topic, not my academic topic at all. I am doing something very different, as was mentioned in the introductions. So I don't actually know much more about the topic. Outside of what I'm going to present and outside of what I've already learned from you guys. So I'm going to talk about sensitive topics, of course. My first language is not English, as it is obvious. And also in Europe, especially in Eastern Europe, where I come from, I think that like sensitive and politically correct speech is not that well developed. So I, of course, don't intend to offend anyone, but if I use some like words that are inappropriate or might be harmful, please let me know, because I really want to get better at this. Another thing, I assume that in this group many kinds of non-monogamies are accepted. So I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit and find some problems that in non-monogamies might be. Whereas, of course, if I were at a monogamy conference, I would have been talking something. yeah, well, and of course, like, I mean, I'm also, as like many people here, I also do identify as someone who is not strictly monogamous. So any critiques present are at the same time critical myself. So. Also, my talk is more about open relationships because it's also what I'm more personally more familiar with. So this is going to be rather on the axis of cheating versus open relationships. So what I think is very triggering about open relationships, or maybe non-monogamous in general, is I find some answers about this in very classical structuralism. For example, I mean Claude Lévi-Strauss and Edmund Leach mostly. This is actually it goes very well with what Ray was talking about. I think that cheating is actually a part of monogamy in a way. We have a rule of monogamy, I mean mostly accepted, which means that there are breaking of the rules, because we don't need a rule that everyone is supposed to have a nose, right? And I mean, I know that there are people who don't have nose, but we don't need this rule because it's not crossed, right? So what is triggering about open relationship is that that it seems, from mainstream point of view, it seems that there are people who can cross the boundaries, who can kind of have it all. So it would be the difference between a so-called cheater and someone who is in open relationship would be a difference between a criminal and a revolutionary. So it means that if a criminal is caught, they would usually either deny their crime or they would beg for mercy. But rarely they would actually challenge the rules themselves. Whereas revolutionary, which is an open relationship person, they are challenging the rules. So we can also see that there is something about Kantian ethics in it. So cheater is someone who doesn't want to impose their behavior as a universal rule. They are just they are looking for exceptions for themselves. So the person who is in an open relationship is something like a hybris, in this kind of old sense, old Greek sense, which means someone like a hero who can cross the boundaries. So the thing is that because we, as people who engage in some kind of non-monogamous or open relationships, we are trying to balancing out this anxiety of other people by kind of putting stress on this commitment part, on the truth part, because ideal of monogamy is that that everyone is faithful, sexually faithful, and that they are honest in this. Cheater would be something who is dishonest. By cheating. So it means that from the outside point of view, it still might seem that I am cheating, but I'm trying to say no, I am not cheating, because this honesty part is actually kind of emphasized. So this is, I think, the main reason why we are so, I would say, obsessed about honesty and open communication and truth. And this is going to be challenged, of course. Yes. So what I think is kind of like an inherent part of non-monogamy discourses is, and I think that some of those things we also touched already. There is this idea of like unified will. So while I do think that that non-monogamous communities allow for like changes in personal preferences, and they encourage learning, it is kind of expected that an individual at any point of time would know what they want and they would act accordingly. So like very often, like when someone is doing something even consensually, but it's not like with this enthusiastic consent, let's say, like it's perceived as something that is not strictly correct. Like, for example, engaging in a sexual activity with someone more for their pleasure than for my pleasure, even though like I'm fully consenting, but maybe not so super enthusiastically. And I mean, yeah, like a lot of people do this. Sometimes it might be harmful, but I think that sometimes it might be totally okay. But I think that in general it is very often frowned upon. So I'm thinking like this would be like first continental philosophy reference would be that, like, for example, Friedrich Nietzsche is strictly opposing this idea of unified will, that we have one will and then we go strictly along with it. Like, he says that usually when we want something, there are like different forces at play. So like I want something, and at the same time there are some forces against it. And this is basically like what everyone knows when they are, like kind of like when like we have hard time to decide about something. Like you have like kind of like wills that go against each other. Yeah, another thing that I also find very present in a lot of non-monogamy, mostly like these, social media talks, is a very strong emphasis on individualism. So, non-monogamy is supposed to be like very, open and very like allowing, for example, that if I have multiple partners, I don't expect from one person to fulfill all my needs. So I am like putting, let's say, less stress on the partner because I can find some fulfillment somewhere else. But I think that there is not that many tools for like finding compromises between within the relationship styles themselves. So, like, for example, if I want an open relationship and my partner doesn't, I think that mostly in social media you can find that, well, okay, this is not monogamic. You have to get out of this. And I think that like this can also, these things can be worked upon, right? And I am sure that like a lot of people actually did this in practice themselves, some kind of negotiating. So yeah, well then there is sometimes, and I think that we talked about it actually in Q&A of the previous talk a lot, about like rules versus boundaries. Sometimes it's also like very, very, very hard, like boundaries of, like, for example, whether my partner is engaging in some sexual activities. I can have some like rules about it, like, for example, their sexual activity must be like protected so that it protects my health. So is it a rule or is it a boundary? Like, it's kind of like sometimes very hard to differentiate. Then, like, being non-monogamous for like kind of wrong motivation. Like, for example, I think that very often in non-monogamous people don't like thinking about non-monogamy or open relationships as a solution to cheating. they think that like cheating, and this is again like this like desire to differentiate themselves from the cheaters. So like I mean, I think that like for example in my personal experience, open relationship was a solution to cheating, and I know that like sometimes it is also not very. I mean, people don't like it much. Like, I mean, in a way, I would say that, for example, in my case, it was something like that, like cheating the system, like this kind of crossing the boundaries. So, like by like having it all, by having a relationship, and at the same time being allowed to have like some like outside of relationship sexual encounters. It feels for monogamous people that it is cheating of the system, and this is, I mean, non-monogamy people would usually probably say that it's not about cheating the system; it's more about like non-possessive love or non-possessive respect and freedom, autonomy, things like that. I think that both things can be actually true at the same time, or I mean, in different cases. Yes, so there is like some structural problems that we touched upon a lot. I think that non-monogamy, like groups or communities, are very demanding in like what is like allowed and what is not, and it's a lot about honesty in communication, and it is. I think it is also very, very demanding in terms of like being able to like articulate and communicate whatever you feel like, whatever you expect from relationships. It is nicely summarized by Christian, I think, Plesse, who was also voted a lot here in this conference. So the endorsement of reflexivity, relationship talk, and rationalization of emotions and carefully scripted negotiation in polyamory favors particular modes of habitus, which are much more prevalent in middle-class cultures. So we can see that there is like some classism involved with that. There is, of course, like racism is connected to it. I mean, partially separate, partially connect. Yeah, I mean, this is also like someone can talk about it better. I think about the emphasis on sex. We already talked in the first two presentations in the morning. Like this like in those like talks, like it's a lot about sex, right? And this is also gonna be important for me in the end. So to give you a little bit clear understanding of or like a concrete example of where I see the classism, and I am going to get to my point about cheating. I am going to offer you like an example of where I see the classism is very much present. So a long time ago, I don't know, like 15 years ago, before I started exploring non-monogamous and open relationships because it was like, especially in my country, it was not present at all. I had a colleague in a low-paid job in a coffee shop, and she had a husband and also like long-term lover. She was having, I think, 3 part-time jobs. She was taking care of her son, and her husband had a disability. So like back then there were people at work, our mutual colleagues, who said that like, oh yeah, she should either divorce or she should leave her lover. But by divorcing her husband, she would leave him alone, of course, in a difficult position. She would breaking her family apart, and leaving the lover would mean giving up some support she was getting, giving up some enjoyments she was having. There was also a practical support that the lover was like giving her, and she would also lose a friend. So she would not be like, even if those like discussions about non-monogamous had been present back then, she would not have been in a situation that she could, access these things. Which doesn't mean that she was like stupid or something, of course. She was actually like the first person in my life who showed me that cheating in this case might be actually morally neutral. I would not say good, but I think that it was also not bad in this particular case. She also showed me that that it is possible to love two people at the same time, and also that love or relationships are about a lot more than just like emotion. This is also what we talked about a lot at this conference. Yeah, so like, I mean, the idea that she would be, in all those like talks on Instagram in English about boundaries, compersions, relationship anarchy, metamours, and things like that. Like, this would be like totally inappropriate to expect her to actually access all these sources. Yeah, there was this quote. So this is exactly, it summarizes what I said about this like concrete example. What I also find interesting is that actually like the middle class, who now seems to be the vehicle of like this advancement of non-monogamies, was actually also very important part of actually promoting monogamy, how we know it right now, with nuclear family and with this like emphasis on love. Yes. So I am now going to turn to something that can at least pretend to be philosophical. So this is going to be Michel Foucault here. I know that Michel Foucault can be very problematic, but I think that even though he was not interested in this topic specifically, I think that his work on sexuality has actually something to offer in these discussions. He claims that sexuality in Western culture since the Middle Ages has been increasingly becoming the problem of truth. He talks about medicine, that like sexuality was being like kind of covered up the whole time. I'm not sure whether I agree with this. I think that actually some historians don't agree with that, but I think that it's true that, like, for example, confessions, Catholic confessions, are very, very in line with this, like that sex was considered something secret and shameful that has to be revealed and taken out, and that it's gonna free us, kind of. Also Michel Foucault says that psychoanalysis is in a way a continuation of this tradition of confessions. So it is like, again, we are supposed to, at least in traditional psychoanalysis, we are supposed to say things, and that is the way to be free from that. He made quite a famous distinction between ars erotica and scientia sexualis. Well, I mean, this is, I think, again, like a little problematic, but like he says that ars erotica is something that other cultures had, like some kind of secret wisdom of sexuality, and that would be like something that is hidden, it is secret, but it is some kind of like a sacred wisdom that would be shared by teachers, by some like wise old people to their like students, pupils, stuff like that. In scientia sexualis, which would be the Western culture, it actually goes the opposite way. It means that I am actually talking to my superior about my sexual experiences. So it means that I'm talking to the priest or I'm talking to my psychotherapist. And this is like how I'm going to get rid of this, like to kind of like free myself from this like dark secret of sexuality. And I think that, and this is I think more my take on now, like that these things might also be like why communication is such a crucial concept in romantic relationships. We are supposed to communicate things, especially about sex, and the honesty, this like truth that is supposed to be between monogamous partners is like one of the most important things. So like for example, like if I cheat in a monogamous relationship, and if I confess this is to my partner, this is like a way to kind of make it right, or I mean at least I can try to make it right. And I am basically putting my partner in the position of a priest or psychologist in a way that they should actually forgive me or maybe condemn me. These are like the two options. So I am actually like pushing responsibility of my wrongdoing to my partner. So they are going to solve it for me. I think that in open relationships, especially like when one side of the relationship might not be like completely 100% on board with open relationships, this like idea of communication can be very pervasive, especially if, like, for example, I am kind of like I've been studying all these like strategies of communications, of convincing all these like discourses about non-monogamy. So then like I might push it as a morally better thing to my partner, and they might feel like pressed by this. So this is the last thing, and this is where it's gonna get even wilder. So so my idea is that we can try to blur the strict dualism of cheating and open relationship. And I don't think that cheating, I mean, it's not that I would say like, okay, let's cheat, it's fine. I am like just saying that like for people who are like in different contexts, who are not in the context of having conferences about non-monogamous and, you know, like talking about all this like kind of, like, even for me sometimes this is difficult, right? And I am here and I know what you'll be talking about. But like, I mean, a lot of people don't have access to these things. So I think that this dichotomy of like cheating is wrong and open relationships are great, like can be maybe blurred a little bit, just to be more inclusive. And I think that it can be done by breaking this like very tight connection between sex and truth. So one thing is, I think that sex doesn't need to be that important. Like, For example, I mean, I don't usually make rules about my partner going to have coffee with their colleagues, right? Like, I mean, I think that sex can be just like something very casual. It can be like having a dinner and having a conversation with someone. It can be very meaningful, but it can be also very like casual. You don't even remember anymore. I mean, much remember, whatever. And like the last thing, the most controversial thing, it's that, I think, I think that it can be like that, that the truth might be something that I actually trust my partner so that they want me to believe it right now. So truth doesn't need to be, doesn't need to be like a revelation of like objective truth. It can be more like of a responsibility of the person who is telling something as a truth. So, and I mean, it did happen to me like many times. Like someone was telling about unimportant things, like that they said, oh, I didn't want to tell you back then because I think that it would not have done any good. And like sometimes I have to agree, right? Like, so I think that truth can be understood more like contextually, like what works the best at the given moment. And also, of course, like I don't think that this is for us. I think that this is more like for understanding like people who are not in these like complicated non-monogamy discourses. So that's the end. And this is, yeah, it's kind of selected, but yeah, this is my video.